Hi, David with 4-Leaf Gear Company. I'm out in beautiful Starkenburg, Missouri today, enjoying one of these spring days where it warmed up pretty nice, sun is shining. It is a little chilly though. Wind's blowing. You can see it's clear skies and really pretty. But wind's blowing out of the north, a little bit chilly, but otherwise not too bad. I'm going to just do a little short walk down here to the creek and set up the stove and take a look at that and kind of walk everybody through how that all works. All right, well, I made it to the creek. I'll go ahead and walk, try and find a nice spot here on kind of an outcropping of sandstone down here in the creek, and try to find a spot there to kind of set up a little bit out of the wind. Flushed a bird of some type. But anyway, this is a spot that I have been visiting for most of my life. Like I say, here in Starkenburg, Missouri, central Missouri, not far from Herman. But this nice outcropping of rock, I've literally played here since I was a kid. So I'm gonna find a little place down here, set up the stove, and like I said, kind of walk everybody through it, how it works and what some of its features are. All right, so we got set up here on the bank of the creek on the rocks that we were looking at a while ago as we were walking up. I pulled out some of my cook kit and the new 4-Leaf Outdoor Company ultra lightweight camping stove. And it's disassembled, and primarily today I want to talk about using it, setting it up for use with the Trangia style alcohol burner. This actually happens to be an Esbit brand, but it's basically a clone of the Trangia. Costs very similar price, not really any huge savings by buying the Esbit brand. One thing primarily I do like about it though is on this simmer ring that they call it. It has this fold-out handle. That comes in very handy when your burner's been going for a little while and you got flame there, and the last thing you want to do is take and drop it on over a flame like this. You're going to burn your fingers for sure. Well, this little handle allows you a little distance to the flame, protect your fingertips a little bit. And also, that handle is attached to why they call this a simmer ring, is this little top flap opens, and it basically allows you to change the opening and how the burner respirates, and change the heat and the temperature that the burner is creating. So you could legitimately simmer or cook a slow cooking type food, or just keep something warm with this, rather than most of your DIY penny stoves, soda can, beer can stoves. It's all or nothing. They burn full blast pretty much, and that's about it. I have heard some modifications people have made where they can actually figure out ways to adjust that, but this was made for that, designed for it primarily and originally, and it works. So anyway, yeah, that would basically snuff the flame or be used to lower the temperature of the flame. So then a little further look at this. This would be the main body of the stove and the cap. This, I believe it's a tin base. It may be brass coated, but it's not brass. That would be much heavier. This isn't as heavy as it would be if it were solid brass. But anyway, it has a screw-on lid. And one nice feature is the lid actually has an O-ring, a rubber or probably a Buna style O-ring in it, neoprene maybe. That allows you to actually seal this burner up if you have unspent fuel and you don't want to have to try to worry about pouring it back in your fuel bottle. This seals actually well enough that you could put this cap back on here and actually put this back in your pack without fear of it leaking all over the rest of your gear. So that's pretty handy. You could actually, if you were going on a short 1 or 2 day trip, just put fuel in here and not even need to carry another bottle along with you. So that's another nice feature. have to forgive me, the cool air's got my nose giving me a little bit of a sniffly nose today. So, a further look at this, like I said, screw on lid. You can see that the jets for the burner are all around the top here. Alcohol goes in here. Actual capacity of this, I'm not too sure. I usually pour in about 2 ounces, maybe 3 ounces at a time. Depending on how long that you intend to use it, you may want to up that and fill it, you know, nearly full. Obviously, there's a limit to how full you can fill it. But I'm pretty sure probably 3 or 4 ounces of capacity it would be pretty average, pretty normal. Okay, so how this works with the 4-Leaf Gear Company stove. The stove design that I came up with, the idea of the 3-sided triangle-shaped stove is not unique. There are other companies that have similar items like this for sale. I was looking for something like it though, and found that it didn't offer all the features that I was wanting. Primarily, no adjustment, very little adjustment, and not very flexible in terms of use, of how flexible and versatile it can be. So, one of the primary features that I was concerned about going into it was for use of the Trangia stove, number one, but also to be versatile enough to use a typical soda can or beer can style penny stove or alcohol stove, something like this, or even tea light candles for a heat source. So anyway, I'll have another video about that and talk more about that, but mainly focusing on the Trangia today. I'll go ahead and walk through how this thing actually assembles. Alright, well, I've repositioned myself to be just a little more comfortable. But starting out, what you want to do is basically, it'll come flat. There are basically these 3 pieces, which are the 3 side pieces, and it'll come with a disc that is the same size as the Trangia burner diameter on this ring, a flat disc, and it also comes with a triangle shaped, what I'm calling a wood grate, that will fit into the bottom so you can actually use it to burn wood or other biofuels. So the way you want to start is basically holding the 3 side pieces in an orientation that you can read the text, so the text is normal to the world. If you can read it, you're holding it the right way. Down is the bottom and up is the top. So this can be a little bit clumsy for me trying to face you and do this and keep it to where you can see it, but I'll kind of bumble through it here and hopefully get this shown real well how it works. But we'll start by taking the first 2 sides, and you start basically, I think it seems pretty self-explanatory, but by taking the male tab and it slides into the female slot. And what I would recommend, and I'm including these in the kit, they weigh absolutely nothing. It's basically 3 pieces of aluminum wire. These are bent because I've already used them a little bit, but these help basically make sure it's kind of a double safe deal to make sure that the stove stays together. You want it to be easy to disassemble, but you don't want it to fall apart while you're using it. So this actually acts as just a secondary, it's kind of like peace of mind kind of thing, just to make sure. And it also helps with the assembly of making things a little easier to put together. But if you put that piece of wire through there and you basically just bend it around, and I just bend it kind of like that. Nothing special, don't have to twist it or put any kinks in it or anything. Just a simple bend around and then kind of fold the ends in so you don't get poked by them. Then that helps keep that together. You don't have to fight that sliding apart. It makes the next step easier. So then you take the next piece, again in the same orientation as the previous 2, and slide the male tab into the female slot in the plate. And then you can go ahead and put in the next piece of aluminum safety wire. Like I said, and it simply just bend the ends in. Don't have to do any twisting like a bread tie or anything. Just simple bent on around. Then that leaves you with the last side. And it can be a little tricky when you first get the stove because things haven't really, you kind of got to use it a little bit, and the slots and the tabs start fitting a little better. But that snaps in pretty good. Actually having the two wires on these kind of hold everything together enough that you really probably wouldn't even need to put the third one in, but I like to. If you plan on putting a heavy pot of water or something on here, you're going to want to have that peace of mind that it's not going to fall apart, especially if you're sitting on uneven ground. So we'll go ahead and put this third piece of wire on. Fold the ends in. So now we basically have the stove fully assembled and ready for use with the Trangia burner. So the next step is we take the burner, and there's a couple ways you can do it here. If you've already transported it and you have alcohol in it, you're going to have to be a little more careful with this next step because you don't want to spill. You don't want to spill the fuel. It is highly flammable, and you do need to be careful when working with this alcohol fuel. So what I typically do, and I do have probably about an ounce of alcohol in here right now, so what I do just to make it easier in the next step is I just loosen the lid just a little bit, just to where the seal is still making contact a little bit, but it's not so tight that you have to put a lot of torque on it or force to get it loose. And you'll understand why in the next step. But here's where the slots in the sides come into play. They basically fit this ring, this flange on the alcohol stove. So, like I said again, this is fairly new. You can see I have burned with it a little bit, used it a little before. As you use it, you'll get this patina or this discoloration on the stainless steel. It still won't rust, but you will get that kind of a discoloration or a patina. But I'll take this, and basically it has to be a little flexible because it has to fit. So you just kind of work this up into the slots in the sides, and it'll be real self-explanatory when you start doing this yourself. And I have found in doing this that the middle slot, or I wouldn't say the middle, probably it's the third from the bottom slot, tends to be about the most versatile for use for cooking or boiling water. So that basically just snaps in there, and now it's held in there. The Trangia stove is firmly and secure in there. And it does if you're in windy conditions, or if it's really cold, or if for some reason you can adjust this height. You could use a lower one if you're trying to simmer something more, or you could potentially use a little bit higher one if you're using a different size pot or anything on top. So that's primarily how it assembles and how it's used. Like I said, then the part comes along where I mentioned having the lid a little bit loose. Then it's easy to reach in here, and just with a few twists, you can basically, if there's fuel in there still, you can remove the lid easy enough and get to it. And then tripod design sits real good on off-camber natural surfaces. You could, there's a little ledge here. I can kick one leg onto that to kind of adjust for level, and a pot would sit right on there, nice and firm. I mean, that's pretty solid. I wouldn't be concerned at all about having that completely full of water and sitting on there and worrying about it falling over. Very stable. One other thing about the design I didn't mention is the top. If you look at the profile, you'll see that it has a standing tab here, then a relief, and then another standing tab. What that does on the three sides is it creates basically two diameters for your various cookware. The inner three create a diameter or a platform for like a camp cup, a stainless steel camp cup, a Snow Peak cup, something like that, that a lot of ultralight backpackers would use. And then I didn't want it to be limited to being able to use such small cookingware, so I put the three, or basically it's one on each side, but it creates the three larger diameter points that allow for the use of, well, like this bush pot, which is much larger than a standard camp cup, and it fits on there real sturdy. This thing is very sturdy and strong. I actually have a 12-inch cast iron Lodge skillet that I put this on at home just to see what kind of weight it would support. And it actually felt surprisingly stable with that amount of weight on it. Now, I wouldn't recommend that. You're not going to obviously probably take a cast iron skillet with you camping, but it would do it. It does hold up the weight, so it gives you kind of an idea of what the design intent was. Okay, so as I open up my bush pot, I'll get out my camp cup, and you can see this is no special brand name. It's just your standard stainless steel butterfly handled camp cup. I think I picked it up at Walmart for about $6. And the diameter of this is pretty standard and pretty regular. And you can see that it fits on the 3 inner tabs. The 3 inside tabs I was talking about are basically the exact right size for this. So it creates a very stable platform for the cup. And like I said, not only the cup, but then also the big pot will fit on the outer ones. And again, very stable. Wouldn't have any concern about a full pot of water on there. So that shows a little bit of the form and function, the versatility of the stove. Like I said, I'll do other videos probably coming soon that show and kind of highlight the use of the 4-leaf gear ultralight stove with the multi-purpose disc rather than the Trangia stove. Like I mentioned, basically the Trangia stove, if you don't have one or you don't like them, you don't have to use this with that. You could also, when you, let me remove this. Okay, so if you remove your Trangia stove, you could also use this simply as a pot stand. A lot of ultralight backpacking guys don't actually use much hardware. You could use this simply as a pot stand. The distance may be a little far away for some alcohol burners. This alcohol burner that I made here, the DIY soda can stove, I actually intentionally made the jets on the very top so that they shoot more out of the top rather than out of the side. What it does is it forces more flame up through the middle of the 4-leaf stove. And this actually will work pretty well by just setting that stove down and just putting this over top of it. That height actually isn't too bad. And the sides, the stainless steel sides, actually, because they don't transfer heat as much as aluminum would, do a pretty good job of reflecting and keeping heat in the central area here. And a pretty typical boil for 2 cups of water with various cookware that I've used is all around, pretty typical around the 6-minute range. In whatever method I've set it up, whether it be the Trangia style stove or actually this alcohol stove that I've had pretty good luck with. So as I mentioned before, versatility was really the primary goal of this stove. Reliability, keeping it lightweight. In this setup, without the disc, I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe that this still comes in under 4 ounces. So it kind of falls in that ultralight category. Now with the additional, if you chose to carry the additional plates, a multi-purpose plate and the wood grate that will also be shipped with this, it ends up being about 5.3 total. The actual postal shipping weight is about 5.8 because I have it in an envelope and some other things. But so it is still fairly lightweight. I mean, you can see there's really not too much to it. It's 24 gauge, number 304 stainless steel, and should remain rust proof. And like I said, besides the heat, giving a little patina on the sides where it gets hot. And if you use this to burn wood in, which I did on one of the prototypes at home, you basically end up with a black one. I mean, it pretty much discolors the whole thing. Doesn't affect the function or use, but it's gonna show its wear, just like the bottom of your pots and your cups are going to as you use them around campfires and near wood. That's basically the 4-Leaf Gear Company lightweight camping stove. Using it with Trangia style burner, and hopefully we'll come back real soon and have some additional videos showing how to use it more in like maybe an emergency preparedness type situation with the multi-purpose disc, taking advantage of that to show the use of some do-it-yourself alcohol stoves, and also, like I said, for emergency preparedness, tea light candles, various other heat sources can be put in here to heat water, make coffee, heat or cook, small quantities of food. You're not going to make a banquet on this thing, but intent and purpose is camping and survival, emergency preparedness type stuff. All right, well, this is David. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate your support. Check us out. I try to keep items listed on eBay, and check out YouTube video, the other videos here, and like us on Facebook. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.